Welcome back to the Destination Dream Job podcast. Today I have with me Michelle Schaefer. She is an ICF certified coach, author, and facilitator specializing in career transition and leadership. She is the owner and founder of Michelle Schaefer Coaching, empowering people to navigate career transitions with confidence. She is also the author of the #1 bestseller, Cultivating Career Growth, Navigating Transitions with Purpose. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Steph. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so today we are going to talk all about networking, which is so many people's least favorite topic, especially
Yes.
in the job search. So, what are some of the most common struggles that you see with people who are trying to network and who are starting to join their networking journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. I mean, I've got two teenage boys, and I'm going to use the word cringy when I talk about this topic. And that's oftentimes what I get from clients is they literally will roll their eyes and kind of get a little bit of a shudder when I even just mention networking. Where I see a number of clients really struggle with networking is it comes back to ways that we hold ourselves back. And there's a number of clients who just have certain beliefs about networking. They have beliefs about how they can be with networking, maybe, not feeling very confident about it. And it's those beliefs that oftentimes will hold people back. They decide that they're not going to reach out because they fear that, oh, people are going to be too busy, or they don't reach out because they think, you know what, this networking thing is kind of clunky and awkward. Like, I don't know if I really want to put myself out there. But I do find that their beliefs and ways of thinking about networking are barriers that really hold them back from taking action.
I think that's so true. Okay, full confession, I've never really talked about this before, but before I started this business, I was in an MLM, and I'm not going to name any names, but they had a very pushy sales, script.
Yeah.
And I spent some time on LinkedIn. And so I apologize to any of my LinkedIn followers who were subject to that, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, where I sent these messages that were like so, like, it just reeks of like, exactly what I was trying to do in these
Oh,
messages, right?
yeah.
And I think like that's what we all feel when we go into networking. We're like, oh, we're gonna feel like that super like spammy, awkward person who's trying to get something out of someone else. But I think like in my experience, once I started my business and truly like actually caring about the messages that I sent, I
Yeah.
think, when you come at it from that lens, you just have a different energy when you approach it, and people are a lot more appreciative. Do you have any thoughts on
Exactly.
that?
Exactly. I mean, I think you make a really interesting point, like that there's a negative association with networking that like networking equals sales, like networking equals pushy, networking equals aggressive. And yes, we've all experienced that. I know I've gone to many events where as soon as I step into the room, there's somebody there, they basically thrust their business card in my face. They start talking about all of what they're doing, what they're about, how they can help me. And yes, that approach is very pushy, and it's the kind of thing that really repels people. So when that's your experience, of course you never want to come across in that way. And that is one reason why some people just decide that they're not going to embark on any kind of networking activities because they have those bad associations, those bad memories. So, one of the things that I'll talk about with clients who are really hesitant to network and I'll talk about it mainly in the context especially of one-on-one conversations and underscore the word conversation. So if we can even think differently about networking, I'll say to people, think about your day. You have conversations with people every day, sometimes even in the context of a week. You may even have conversations with people that you've never met before. So imagine like a new neighbor moves in beside you when you go and introduce yourself. Well, that's a conversation. Imagine you're at the grocery store and somebody in front of you or behind you starts talking to you. You have a conversation. Maybe if you have kids and you start talking to the parents at your kids' school or your kids' activities, well, those are all conversations too. The difference with networking is, yes, it's a conversation, but it's a conversation that has to do in one way or another with your job search. Or maybe you're not in a full-fledged job search. Maybe you're just exploring different career paths. Maybe you don't really like what you're doing right now and you want to explore other career paths, things that you hadn't really considered for yourself. Well, in order to really gather enough information, you need to talk to people, you need to have conversations. And that's really networking. So when we frame it as a conversation and we also make it about the other person, it's actually not primarily about ourselves. So, some of your listeners may be actively looking for work right now, and your backstory is, oh my gosh, hire me. I'm looking for work. I really need a job. But that's not what we lead with. What we lead with is, help me understand how you got into this career path, or help me understand how you joined this company, or tell me more about why this organization is a great place to work, or what challenges are you experiencing at this company right now. When we make it about the other person and we ask questions, we make the conversation about the interaction, like the actual conversation, and less about the transaction, which is just kind of ticking it off. That's how we can make it less salesy and more authentic to ourselves and our own approach.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's so valuable. I had a client who is interested in making an industry change, and there's been
Mm.
following this one company, and he noticed that they were putting on like a public pickleball event, and so he was like, "No, I
Ah,
might as well go and see if I can learn anything about the company and play pickleball at the same time." So his goal was just to like maybe learn something and get more information and have a good time. Well, he ended up
yeah.
getting partnered with the CEO of the company.
Oh,
And so the guy was like, "Oh, so what do you do for work?" And they had struck up a conversation. He shared his interest in moving into that industry, and the guy ended up connecting him with the hiring manager. And so
isn't that
like
amazing?
that is amazing. Yeah, it's not always how it goes, but I think like the key is I just remember like so many times, especially in sales, like as business owners, we've all listened to like sales conversations or sales podcasts or whatever. And it's
Yeah,
always talks about steering the conversation. It's like, you got to
yeah,
steer the conversation to the direction you want it to go. But in my experience, I have not actually found that to be very successful. What I found to be
yeah.
successful is doing exactly what you're doing. Having conversations, offering suggestions, being a kind and caring person. And then those people are like, oh, I want to learn more. Let's talk about it. So I think
Yes.
it's the same thing in your job search, right? Like having those genuine and honest conversations and going into it
Yeah.
with, I just want to learn about the company or about the organization.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we can really equate curiosity with networking, believe it or not, because the more curious we are about an individual or their organization or what their career roots have been, then we can ask questions that really align with the kind of information that we do want to gather. And it's that information that's going to inform our career exploration. It's going to inform our job search. And I liken networking to going on vacation. Maybe not as much fun for people who don't really enjoy engaging in this activity. But the reason I say networking is like going on vacation is because similar to going on vacation, you need to have a destination. Like you need to have like kind of a point to the conversation, but you also need to have a plan. Like how are you going to gather information that's going to be useful for your job search? And for individuals who are particularly resistant or really hesitant to engage in this activity, the very first step that I take with them is, let's make a plan. I never say to people, so just go and like just randomly start reaching out to people, like just start having conversations. Like that's the very definition of a nightmare for a lot of people, and especially somebody who's really fearful and anxious. Networking creates a lot of anxiety. So that's not the first step. But the first step is, first of all, like figure out what are all the organizations that you're interested in exploring? Like, do your research, make a list, and then make a list for each of those organizations. Who are the people that you can tap to get you a conversation. So these might be friends of yours, they might be friends of friends. Like it's that idea of looking through the network to all the people that we know. And then it's figuring out, well, if I was going to get a conversation with this person, what would I like? What's the point of the conversation? Like, what would I really be asking for when I actually ask for their time so that they know the purpose of the conversation? And then taking it one step further, if I'm lucky enough to get that conversation, what are all the questions I would want to ask that individual? And then how am I going to talk about myself? Because eventually the conversation will come back to you. You do want to make sure that you are talking about yourself in a concise way, in a memorable way, in a way that the other person has an understanding of who you are and what you're all about, the kind of employee that you are, what's important to you. So when we prepare all of that in advance, it can increase somebody's confidence, their comfort level. They feel like they can do this. They feel like they have an approach, they have a plan, they have a structure. And I find having that kind of structure for any networking conversational activity, it just makes it that much easier for people to actually start. It's like the way in to get past some of that anxiety.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what if you reached out to someone and they were like, "Yeah, let's chat in 10 minutes," and you had no plan, no questions or nothing? Then you'd be
Yes.
like, "Oh no," and you'd probably bomb that meeting.
Yeah.
So yeah, that preparation and that planning is really, really important. Do you recommend that people use LinkedIn primarily for their networking, or what are your suggestions?
LinkedIn is an excellent source, obviously, to do any kind of networking activity. I do find on LinkedIn your messages need to be like heavily abbreviated because LinkedIn only gives you so many characters if you're not already connected with that individual. But certainly to be able to reach out, to be able to position like a little bit about yourself, how you're hoping the other person will help, and actually making a request for their time. The one big mistake that I find people will do, whether it's on LinkedIn or other platforms, is they reach out to people and they want to get connected with them. And they said, so, let me know if you see anything that comes out, like maybe, let me know if you hear of a project manager position that's being posted. Then the other person, well, tends to not reply because they don't need to. If they're not seeing anything, it requires no action. So, really make a point of asking for the conversation, whether you're asking for it over LinkedIn, or I do find email can be a more effective use of your real estate of your message because you can position a few things really effectively over email. You can position, a little bit about yourself. If somebody in your circle recommended that you reach out to that person, you can name drop and make sure that reference to that person is there. You can ask for what you need. So if you're hoping that the person will be able to give you insight on some of the challenges within their organization or give you insight on how you can market yourself to, be seen as a fit for this particular job, you would position that in your meeting request. You would also table like a few days and times that would work for you. So I find that all of that can be really effectively done in an email. You get a little bit more space. But if you are doing it over LinkedIn, you can achieve the same aim, but just in a lot shorter. But do ask for the conversation. Don't just stop at, please let me know if you see something, because that tends to just result in a ghost answer. The person doesn't really need to respond back, and it doesn't really create any further engagement either.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great tip. In terms of emailing, I'm interested, like I'm a huge LinkedIn person and I'm not really an email person. So have you found that emailing tends to be more effective and people get more responses through email?
I do, and it's mainly because you can explain a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And the other reason too, and Steph, I'm sure you get lots of LinkedIn connection requests, lots of LinkedIn messages. Sometimes those messages, people just don't pay attention to them as much because they think, oh, this person's just trying to sell me something. They want my time. I don't know who they are. So if you do reach out over LinkedIn, do make a point of engaging with that person first on the platform. Like look them up, like engage with their posts, like them, comment on them, share them, like show that person that you are really interested in their insights, but then be really crisp and concise with your messaging, especially asking for a conversation, but not just asking for their time. Make sure to position why it is that you're hoping to get their time, and make reference to any mutual connections that you have. Maybe you went to the same university, or maybe you took some of the same courses, or you volunteer at the same organization. Do make reference to anything that you might have in common. Those are going to be the kind of things that will entice people to say yes.
Hmm. For sure, yeah. And I mean, like, another aspect of networking is like the
Mm.
rejection part of it, where people either say
Yes.
no, they don't respond. You're like, ooh, was it something I said? Is it me? Right? There's
Yeah.
always lots of thoughts around
Oh,
that.
yeah.
So, what advice do you have for people who really feel like nervous about putting themselves out there specifically because of that rejection?
Exactly. And in a job search, as we know, there is lots of rejection, right? You apply for jobs, you don't hear back, you interview for a job, you don't get the job. Networking is part of that rejection. You might reach out to people, you're hoping to get a conversation with them, you don't hear anything, and then cue all of the other beliefs that will rise to the surface. And some of the things that oftentimes will come to mind if you don't hear anything from the person that you're reaching out to is, oh, yeah, that person's too busy. I'm not going to bug them. Or, oh, they don't really want to help me. Or, oh, I'm doing this all wrong. I've got all the wrong message. So therefore, they're not going to say yes. Like there's so many negative things that can come to mind. And these are really part of our limiting beliefs. They're assumptions that we're making, they're judgments that we're making about ourselves and our abilities, about networking in general, about the other person and their intention. And the reality is, we don't have facts to back up any of those things. So, my advice for all of your listeners who are wondering, oh, I don't know if I can do this, like people might say no, and like what will happen? The first thing is acknowledging that there's some fear around that we are making assumptions, and we're making assumptions about what's happening on the other end. We really don't know the facts. The other thing to acknowledge is, what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, so what's the worst thing that can happen if I reach out and somebody doesn't respond or they say no? Are you any further behind in your job search? Well, the answer is no. You haven't taken a step back. But what happens if the person says yes? You could be very far ahead. So I'll work with clients on that to help them see the potential of what can happen when you do put yourself out there, and also to honor, yes, it can be hard to do that. Yes, there are going to be times where you reach out and people don't respond. So in the times that people don't respond, there's something else that you can do, which is wait 2 weeks. If you haven't heard anything back, reach out again. I find a really nice, friendly way to do that is, I'm just bumping this to the top of your inbox, just checking in to see if it might be possible to have a conversation. Very friendly, very polite. If the person doesn't respond after that, so you've sent the initial request, you follow up one time after 2 weeks. If 2 additional weeks go by and you don't hear anything, you just let it go. And again, it comes back to, are you any further behind from having put yourself out there? Absolutely not. But any of those people can say yes. And when they say yes, they could be giving you another lead. They could be giving you access to a hiring manager for a job. Your conversation might lead to an interview. So many wonderful things can happen. But yeah, we need to recognize that there might be some rejection. But if there's some rejection, it's okay. We can do uncomfortable things and still be okay. And we can actually be very, very far ahead by doing so.
I think it's important to note too that if someone doesn't respond, it doesn't necessarily mean a rejection. Because I want to say,
Mhm.
like, I've gotten clients and they're like, oh, this person referred me. And I'm like, I have no idea who that is. Like, I don't know who
Yeah.
that is, but maybe at some point, maybe they're my LinkedIn follower. Maybe, we crossed paths at one point, or maybe I sent them an email or a message and they noticed it
Yeah.
but didn't respond. who knows what they could be doing with that information. So
Exactly.
it's always good to reach out to more people, I think. I mean, I like to meet new
Yeah.
people, so
And I mean, the key is too is not to wait. So, maybe you reach out to five people this week and then you just sit and wait and see what happens. Well, you could be waiting for a long time and meanwhile you could be reaching out to an additional five people. Like so when you reach out, like just keep on going, like keep reaching out. I like to think of networking and like what we're talking about here, these one-on-one conversations especially as being like really 80% or more of a job search. So, if you think of all of the time that you would spend looking for work and all of the different activities, a lot of people think, oh, I've got to apply for more jobs. I have to send out more resumes, like, because that's how I'm going to find a job. Well, yes, applying for jobs is important, but that's only like 20%. Yeah, like little bit, right, of a job search. The remaining 80% or more is everything to do with relationships and reaching out and establishing relationships with recruiters is part of that too. That's also networking, like whether they're internal recruiters to an organization or whether they're more external recruiters that support a number of different business groups. Reaching out to those recruiters is also networking and building relationships. So when we know in our minds that networking and reaching out and establishing relationships, that is 80% or more of the work effort to find work, all of a sudden it's like we're building this huge case. Why would we not have these conversations? Because they're so vital and critical to a job search. And it's interesting. Like in my so some listeners might be thinking, but Michelle, you're a career coach and like you do this, like you help people with this. Of course, it's easy for you to be able to network and talk about networking. Well, now it is because, I've been coaching for 10 years. So of course it comes a little bit easier to me. But B, when I was looking for work, because I got into career coaching because of career transition. I lost my job twice, was restructured twice, and reinvented myself twice for new things. I had to do a ton of networking. And when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I made all kinds of mistakes. One of my biggest mistakes was I only looked at my network. Like, so at the time, I was moving from financial services to not for profit. And I think I had three people in my network who worked in not for profit. So I reached out to those three people, had conversations, and I was like, well, who else do I reach out to? I guess there's nobody to help me. Big mistake because what I didn't realize at the time was every single person that I know knows hundreds of people. And in those hundreds of people, yes, there were people that they knew that worked in not for profit. I wasn't engaging with the people, like the connections of the people I knew. And that was my biggest mistake. So and it was clunky and awkward when I first started doing it. I remember some of my early conversations. I thought, what is that person going to think of me? Because I wasn't prepared. I didn't have a plan. I just reached out and started having conversations. So, I've learned a lot over the years that now I introduce to my clients and I practice myself. As a business owner, I still have to network. I mean, that's part of how I get clients. The networking is a life skill that never goes away. Yes, we actively use it when we are looking for work, but think of all the other times where you might need to reach out to people. Maybe you live in a house and you have to get your roof done and you want to know about roofers in the area that are reputable. Well, you're going to reach out to your network and you're going to start to ask some questions. Like the networking and the having conversation just never stops. And so when we get comfortable with it, it's practice, it's having a plan. It can serve us so well in our lives and our careers.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned like reaching out to five people a week. Do you have a number of people to network with that you recommend?
I mean, I will hesitate to like say to everybody, like, do this, like make sure you have like my number, like I just use five as an example. But I will say, your number is also going to depend on you and your job search and how you're feeling about your job search in that week. Because if it's a really tough week, like maybe it's been a week where you've been applying for jobs and you've heard some rejections and it's really tough. Like I'm going to say look after yourself. Like make sure always in a job search that you take time for yourself. But if it's like it's a good job search week and like you've got some good momentum, I would say go back to your plan and that's going to govern how many you reach out to every day. So let's say on your list you've got, I don't know, like 50 different organizations that you want to reach out to and you've got contacts for each of them. So like every day, just do a few. Like maybe one day you reach out to three, and another day you reach out to five. But make sure it is consistent for the week. So whether you do it like twice a week or every day of the week, just make sure it's a regular and consistent part of your job search. And so, like looking for work is unique in the way our day plays out because when we're working, we have a routine. Like we go to work, maybe we have meetings either planned for us or we've organized them. We have reports to review or reports to prepare or, conversations to have, like performance conversations with team members or like all of those different things. When we're looking for work, we don't have a routine unless we create it. So if you're looking for work and you don't have a routine right now, do carve out specific time of every day where you are, of course, taking time for yourself, but you are taking time for your search. And within that time for your job search, make sure that networking and setting up networking conversations is a regular part of your day. When I talk to clients who will say to me, well, I'm stuck in my job search, I'm getting nowhere, I'm not getting any interview invites, and nothing is happening. And the first question I ask them is, so tell me about your job search. Like, what are you spending your time on? 9 times out of 10, people are spending time looking online, applying for jobs, and then that's it. So imagine if you start to integrate, even if you've reached out to one person a day, that would increase the number of opportunities that you have to actually have conversations with people. When you're having conversations, you're going to learn things that will help your job search. You're going to get leads. There will be opportunities. And the magic is if in each conversation you ask that person, is there somebody else in your circle that you would recommend that I speak to? Now, one conversation is going to lead to another, is going to lead to another. You're going to continue to have a full funnel of leads in your networking funnel. You don't ever want to get to the bottom and realize, oh, I don't have anybody else to reach out to. Then you're really stuck. So keep adding to that funnel. The best way to do that is to ask people if they can connect you with other people.
Amazing. That was all like some really great
Mm.
advice. So if people are ready to start their networking journey, Michelle is the person to follow. So where can people find you if they want to get to know more about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few places. So if you are on LinkedIn, and certainly if you're looking for work, I'm really hoping that you are, please do reach out. You can connect with me or follow me. I write on career transition topics almost every day, Monday to Friday of every given week. You can also visit my website. It's mschaefercoaching.ca. And there's a few things that you can get there. One is if you felt ready to have a conversation, you wanted to have a conversation with me, I offer complimentary discovery calls just to talk about your job search. Maybe I can offer some suggestions to breathe some new life into your search. I've also recently written a book. And so on my website, there is a tab called My Book. You can get a free chapter to my book. It's called Cultivating Career Growth, Navigating Transitions with Purpose. There is an entire chapter on networking, and you can get a free chapter by visiting my website, or you can also just order the whole book. It's on Amazon, and that can be a great source of inspiration for your networking activity. So, a few different
Awesome.
places to reach out to me.
Right on. We will include those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Steph. Great conversation. Lots of good networking tips to share with your audience.